Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Sioux City. My name is Karen Mackey. I am the lay leader this month. Welcome to this virtual time to reflect and reconnect. We welcome people of all genders, all sexual orientations, all ability levels, from all faith backgrounds. We welcome you into this community of responsible, seeking, and justice-centered living. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day today to join us virtually. And so we will start by, I have some opening words. It is a Memorial Day prayer by Barbara J. Pescan. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names in thanksgiving and in anguish, bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow above graves far from home. Breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing, no more, never again, remember me. For the wounded ones and those who received them back, let there be someone ready when the memories come, when the scars pull and the buried metal moves, and forgiveness for those of us who were not there for our ignorance. And in us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises, let new leaves of protest grow our stumps. Give us courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain, and with our bare hands, out of full hearts, with all our intelligence, let us create the peace. So for the opening song, we've chosen today number 412, Let Hope and Sorrow Now Unite. We do not have our cantor today because of technical difficulties, but Terry will play the song. And we will not be singing it. You're welcome. Thank you very much, Terry. And now I will light the chalice. Please say with me, we gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And I would like to do one other reading that is a chalice lighting for Memorial Day. by Charles F. Flagg. In honor of those we have known and loved in the past, in recognition of the gifts and sacrifices they made on our behalf, and in our sincere hopes that we may be worthy of their memory, we light our candles, we give our thanks, and we offer our prayers. Amen. I would like to start off by lighting a candle for the approximately 100,000 people in this country and the nearly 350,000 people worldwide who have died of COVID-19. I would also like to light a candle for a colleague of mine who has a presumptive positive for COVID-19 and was in ER last night. May she get well very quickly. Go ahead.
Could we light a candle for Terry Brewer, who passed away from complications of COVID-19? That's from Amber.
And we also have one from Judy for Delilah Fuhrer, age 95, passed away Tuesday. For many years, she cleaned the church buildings.
So many of us remember Delilah. May her family know peace. I would like to light a candle for all those who died in service to their country, regardless of what country that is. Do we have other candles?
Yeah, we have one from Shannon. Please light a candle for peace on earth. And a second candle for her student who is still fighting for her life in the ICU.
Oh my. For Shannon's student who is in ICU fighting for her life. Other candles?
I would like to light one for all the ICU nurses that as we open back up and people think this is over, they continue to work long shifts under immense amounts of stress to try and help people.
For the ICU personnel, especially the nurses. Do we have any other candles that we need to light?
There are no more on the chat section.
Okay, I would like one final candle then for joys, sorrows, concerns that remain silent, but that may be spoken of deep in our hearts. And let us now share a moment of silent meditation that will be followed by a meditation on breathing, which is number 1009 in our teal book.
And I will put that up as a shared screen for everybody.
Thank you. Maybe so. Now, as I said, meditation on breathing, 1009 teal book. Thank you. I hope that was calming for everyone. So now is the time in our church service when I remind you about how important it is to make contributions to the church and also to Change for Change. There is now a link that Greg can talk about later that you can go and online make a contribution to the church. But I would remind you that when we meet in person, that every Sunday we pass the plates and we also pass the baskets for Change for Change. And the baskets are used to meet the needs of individuals and groups in our community, and that need is never more present than it is now. Thank you very much.
So we received another candle to light from Corey Cantrell, and this is for the family of one of my students who lost a sister and whose parents are still ill.
Well, may they become healthy very quickly. We pray for everyone who is sick with COVID-19 or for their family members. May they be restored to health. So we're reading today. It's from Lifting Our Voices, which are readings in the living tradition. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names, in thanksgiving and in anguish. Bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. And that really is the most important part of that. I wanted to call back out the reading I did earlier. It's like this, everything that happens to us is not of our choosing. We did not cause COVID-19. It was an accident. No one intentionally did this happen. But what we are faced with is at times stark indifference by governmental officials who put our lives in danger. And may we all peace, and we pray for everyone at this time. So the backdrop to Memorial Day this year is that nearly 100,000 people in the U.S. and 350,000 people in the world have died of COVID-19. In this pandemic, I also think of the people who are forced to mourn alone, without the usual trappings, the wakes, prayer services, funerals, the dinners, without being surrounded and held up by the loving support of their community. In this pandemic, we are left trying to provide virtual support, which just seems so very weak. It's equally difficult for the families of people currently ill with COVID-19. A colleague of mine is ill. She was a presumptive positive, what the hospital said. She had not told her family, all who live in another state, that she'd even tested for COVID or that she had begun to display symptoms until an ER visit last night, which prompted her to let them know what was going on. Can you imagine the panic of parents 1,700 miles away, learning that their baby, doesn't matter how old you are, you're still their baby, likely had corona? Her mom is freaking out, and her father is worse. Both want to jump on a plane to save her. Her siblings all offered to come in their place. All of them. All of them. This is being replayed in thousands of families across our country. And then there are the people, mostly poor, sometimes people of color, who have to work, the so-called essential workers, suddenly important, but who in the past we've sneered at as being losers. They're exposed daily because we have to have our pizza or our hamburgers. Then there are the actual essential workers, people working in hospitals, medical personnel, the people cleaning the rooms, washing the bedding, cooking meals for the patients and staff, everyone. And then there's the people who have to pick up our garbage, fix broken water mains, all those people who have to work because we have to have them working. These are all the things I've been thinking about this Memorial Day weekend. And I've been thinking about the Memorial Days of my childhood. In the Memorial Days of my youth, my mother would take a can, a large can, usually like the tomato juice size. She'd cut the top off, she'd clean it up, put tin foil around it because you want it to look pretty. And she'd go out to her garden and she'd cut the best flowers. She'd put together a bouquet. And then we'd travel across town to my grandma's house. And grandma would do the same thing. She would have a can wrapped in tin foil because she didn't want it looking ugly. And she had a beautiful garden, and we would go out to her garden. And again, she would pick the best flowers to go in this bouquet. Then we would go to Calvary Cemetery. My grandfather was Catholic. My grandmother was Universalist. So it was an interesting marriage, I imagine. But he actually died less than a year after I was born, so I have no memory of him. I just remember his grave and going there on Memorial Day. So the combination of peonies, irises, tulips with the other flowers was just beautiful. Both women took great care to ensure that they had brought their best. You know, I didn't especially like going to the cemetery as a child. There was just too much death. It's strange because now I regularly drive through cemeteries when I need to calm down. I'll often go to the Floyd Cemetery and just drive through, look at the graves. It's a very restful, calm place to me. But as a child, it just was not. You know, interestingly enough, we never went to the reservation on Memorial Day. That was always left for later. And instead of live flowers, because it was a bit of a trek, my father would accumulate a trunk full of plastic flowers, and we would go home to the res and visit everyone's grave, make sure they were cleaned up and they looked nice, and put plastic flowers on their graves. When I was about 20, my parents moved to Oregon, so it became my job to go to Calvary with flowers for my grandfather, and then later for my grandma too. I was poor, and then later just too busy, so I never made it to the reservation. That was my cousin's responsibility. After going to Calvary, I would always call my parents to report in how many other sets of flowers were present, were they real or plastic, what did I take, the condition of the graves and the cemetery in general. It was an intensive interrogation, actually, but I was excellent in providing intel that my parents would tisk over if there weren't enough flowers on the grave, or if my auntie hadn't been there yet. Now I go for me. Although I do still report back, now it's to my younger brother, and we still tisk when our cousins haven't bothered to pay their respects to their sister, their stepmother, or their step-grandparents. My father used to tell me about Memorial Day on the res. The family would make a day of it, cleaning up the grave, bringing blankets and food for a picnic, at their families' graves, and the whole community would do that, really. And when I worked for the Omaha tribe, I discovered that they did the same thing. And they insisted on celebrating the traditional Memorial Day, not this newfangled last Monday in May thing. And the whole community was out at the cemetery, picnicking and fellowshipping and leaving a plate for their deceased family members. In doing this talk, I found a story on the Smithsonian's website about Native Americans and Memorial Day and about celebrations. It talked about some things that I thought were a given, that we honor and revere our veterans, that holding some type of Memorial Day cemetery was a given across Indian country. I'd like to read some of the remembrances of natives across the country. From York, Pennsylvania. I observe this as a day of community reflection and remembrance. Each year we gather to tend the graves at the former Carlisle Indian Industrial School, which, as some of you may know, was the first Indian boarding school in the country. It was designed to save the child and kill the Indian. We gather together, we clean and decorate each grave and take a moment to turn our thoughts towards the experiences of those children, to remember that in the present and to celebrate our resilience. To conclude this, we enjoy sharing food and time with one another. From the Colville Reservation in Washington State, my grandpa, maternal, told our family growing up, you work one day a year on Memorial Day. You take care of our people who've gone before. Clean them up, turn their dirt, make our family look good with what we have. Put flags on the warriors who fought in the wars. You have all summer to rest and the rest of the year to barbecue and party. From Anadarko, Oklahoma. Memorial Day started out as Decoration Day, as my family started up early by cleaning the graves with hose, rakes, and shovels, hauling fresh dirt to make mounds over the graves because the graves sunk and a depression was caused. Mussel shells were collected from the Washita River. Crepe paper and thin wire flowers were placed over the smothered earth at the cemetery. Grandma would tell me who was buried in each grave and how we were related, plus what tribal allotment came to us. The oldest tombstone in our family is Grandma Lizzie's grandma, who was a Mexican child, captured along with others and raised by the Kiowa. Grandma taught me long ago to remember our deceased and remember family history. And the last one is from Oklahoma City. I remember our Memorial Day as a day of carrying a load of flowers to different Indian church cemeteries. It was a day of seeing other families and a lesson in roots. My grandmother would point out different people's graves and how we were related by different friends and their relatives, spreading a sheet across the ground and serving lunch with plenty to share with others. We only left one flower, but at the end of the day, graves were covered with flowers. I've taken on more deceased family members and friends over the years. I hate to see a grave of someone I know and there not to be any decoration on it, especially on Memorial Day. So now I decorate 23 graves each year, and that's just here in town. I still don't make it to the res. For many Americans, apparently, Memorial Day is a day to barbecue. I recently took a poll on my Memorial Day plans, and nowhere in the extensive list of activities was going to the cemetery, which I just found amazing. Having married into a small town family, I found that their observances were similar to mine, if not even more intentional. They go to the cemetery before Memorial Day to clean up the graves, to put out flowers, and to make sure everything is perfect. Then they go back on Memorial Day to participate in the VFW ceremony and visit with people, check out other graves, and only then do they eat. I wondered if this year as did my mother, I go to the cemeteries on Saturday. I didn't see a crazy number of cars out and about as I went to Memorial Park, my first stop yesterday. When I got there, I was in for a surprise. I had never seen so many vehicles at a cemetery and people spending time. Usually when I go there, even if it's Memorial Day weekend, you see a fair amount of cars. But people come, leave their flowers, maybe stay for a minute or two, and then leave. There was actually a bit of a traffic jam trying to get through the cemetery yesterday. There were that many people. And people were staying. At some graves there were benches, people were actually sitting on them, or people were sitting on the ground, or they brought their walkers, their little row leaders with chairs so they could sit. People were staying for a while, which is something I had never, ever seen. And it was the same at Calvary. Huge numbers of cars, people staying a long time. And I'm 63, so I've been doing this a while, but I have never seen so many cars in either cemetery. And that's a good thing. Maybe COVID-19 has something to do with this. In the midst of so much death, maybe we are finally starting to understand that it is important to remember and honor those who have gone before us. It is also important to honor vets, and I do believe that's important. But it's also important to honor all of our ancestors. We are descended, each one of us, from amazing people. We owe them much. So we need to work one day a year. We need to take care of our people. We need to turn their dirt, make our families look good with what we have, put flags on the warriors' graves who have fought in the wars. We have all summer and the rest of the year to barbecue and party. For a closing song today, hold on a second. Let's get Terry. Terry's a little tired. So we're going to be doing number 411, Part in Peace, for our closing song. Give us just a moment to get set up. So these are songs you probably haven't heard before. I'm trying to pick songs for today's service that were specific to the people, to death and to dying. Okay. Thank you, Terry. time in our service when we take time to have any announcements, which are opportunities for us to go forth and live our vision and values in this community and beyond. Are there any announcements?
Would this be an okay time to talk about the donate button, do you think?
It'd be a perfect time to talk about the donate button. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, I'm going to put this on the shared screen here. Perhaps. Take me a second here.
No worries, we have time. It really is important that any of us who are able donate generously to the church and especially to Change for Change. So Greg's putting that up so everyone can see it. And please, if you're able, please consider doing so, even if it's a modest amount.
A prime example of why we do this is because even while we are not heating the building, the roof of the building still has a leak in it that needs to be fixed that we discovered while filming the service.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at the screen, I'm going to make it, try to make it a little bigger here for you. So if you'll note, this is the church's website, which is siouxcityuu.org, which is right here, okay, in case you don't know how to get to the church website. And if you scroll down, well, let me mention first that there's always the upcoming events, and like sometimes people look for the link for the streaming service. So next week, the Church Year by Karen Mackey, I will have a direct link on here soon that you can click on. But if we go back to, if we scroll up, here's the donate button. If you click on it, a different screen will pop up. And you can then choose the amount. You can have a choice of these options, or you can type in your own one. And there's a little arrow here. You can click on this. You can choose church expenses, or you can choose Change for Change. And you can also write a comment, and then you hit next. And then it will take you to a place where you can either pay by PayPal or put in your credit card. So that is that. So the end of my announcement.
Okay. Thank you very much, Greg. Are there any other announcements?
There's a question by Amber. Can we donate to both, or does it need to be two separate transactions? It would need to be two separate transactions.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And John wanted me to tell you that if you're a member and you want to put your pledge in, you can certainly use that. But if you can write a check and send it, that would be better, because we do have to pay a fee whenever we accept money online.
Good point. Thank you, John, for that. Are there any other announcements? And for the closing words today, I chose number 695 in the back of our hymn. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. And that was from Project 5 Years. So at this time, I will extinguish the chalice. Say with me if you're able. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of humanity, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now is the time for our close word. Thank you very much for attending today. This concludes our service. Thank you very much for attending. Have a wonderful week.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have one more announcement, and that is next week we'll have a regular service like we talked about, a Zoom or a crowdcast with Karen. And then the following week in June, we're going to start our forums, and we will meet by Zoom instead of by crowdcast so that everyone can have a chance to be on the screen. And we do have a Zoom account now, so I will be sending a link when I have that set up. Thank you, everyone. We're ending now.